Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Dribble Drive. Austin Render, your host, with you. Thanks so much for joining us again on this latest episode. A reminder, something that changed for last week's episode, and going forward, we will no longer be streaming on X. We will just be streaming live Mondays at 7 o'clock on the YouTube page of the Back Home Network. And then, of course, every episode is available in podcast form on the Apple and Spotify podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us there. Subscribe, like, download, rate. We appreciate all of that interaction. Helps us make the product better. Let's run through some Big Ten news here at the top before we get to our guest, Dave Marcus from the UCLA Broadcast Network. He's going to join us here in just a moment. And saw this across social media last week that Iowa has made a Herky the Hawkeye statue for Lisa Bluder. Check that one out on the Iowa women's basketball social accounts. Very cool. Obviously, she steps away. Jan Jansen comes in here this year as a first-year head coach for Iowa, but they're certainly going to honor Lisa Bluder plenty for all that she did for Iowa. A couple of teams getting ready for their international tours. Purdue's heading to Barcelona, Porto, and Lisbon. And Illinois is heading to Italy and Greece. And then a couple of announcements for the opening day of college basketball. USC is going to open against Ole Miss in Paris. And a great segue into our guest today, UCLA will also be heading out to Paris to take on Louisville. And with that, we bring in our guest here. He is the play-by-play voice of the UCLA women's basketball team, Dave Marcus. Dave, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
Austin, I'm doing great, and I've really been enjoying the podcast. I've been watching since episode 1.
Well, I appreciate that. You're taking in all the Big Ten you can get here as you guys join the new conference here. First off, are they going to be able to get you on the plane to Paris? Are you heading out there?
I'm sure hoping. My passport's all ready, so it's a pretty good opening gig.
Man, that's an awesome place to start the season. Well, let's start the podcast by welcoming you to the Big Ten. I don't think I have any authority to do that, but welcome to the Big Ten anyway. What's kind of your knowledge, your experience with the Big Ten, and kind of your thoughts as you enter into this new conference?
You know, it's very interesting. I'm entering my 22nd year as the voice of the Bruins, and I've worked in 11 Big Ten venues, so it's not going to be completely foreign. Last year, of course, the Bruins played Ohio State at Ohio State, and a great game. But I think it's very exciting for UCLA. With that, a measure of sadness leaving the Pac-12. There are 8 schools we'll no longer be in the conference with. And of course, 22 years, I've made a lot of friends, both in broadcasting around the conference and sports information directors, a lot of people that it's hard to imagine we're not going to be with next year.
Yeah, it is certainly a change, I would imagine, to go so drastically from one group of people to the next. You mentioned that Ohio State game. You guys obviously went to Value City Arena, won that game. That Ohio State team went on to win the Big Ten and certainly will be a fixture in this year's Big Ten. What stands out to you from that game last season for the Bruins?
The most amazing thing to me is that they really held Cody McMahon silent in that game. UCLA always has an image of being flashy Hollywood. They were a solid defensive team. They're still going to be a solid defensive team, and they really put the locks down on Cody McMahon. J.C. Sheldon got going in the second half, but the Bruins did a great job on defense and rebounding in that game. They led by 21 points late in the third quarter of that game at Value City Arena. Pretty shocking result.
It was a dominating performance, and that was kind of when you're like, oh, okay, UCLA is ready to go. And obviously that Ohio State team went on to be the Big Ten champs. But you guys earned a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament last year, 13-5 in the last year of the Pac-12. When you look back at 23-24, how do you assess the season for the Bruins?
It's hard to look back at a season in which the team won 26 games and went to the Sweet 16 and almost beat LSU as being a little bit of a disappointment. I think that's how most of the players felt. They have nothing to be disappointed about. They had a great year. They had a dominating November and December. 4 cross-country trips in a row. They handled UConn and the Cayman Islands, were up by 20 in that game. They beat Florida State at Mohegan Sun the next week, were up by 20 in that game, won by 15. They went to Arkansas, won by 25, and then the Ohio State game. So this team proved that they could handle travel very well. In the Pac-12 schedule, there were 3 games at the end of the year that were basically final possession losses. At Utah, the Utes tied it with about a second to play, won in overtime. The incredible Oregon State game, 4 lead changes in the last 10 seconds of that game. I mean, huge shots for the Bruins. Angela Dugalich buried a 3 to give them the lead. Lauren Betts hit a catch-and-shoot elbow jumper to put them up with 1 second to play. And then Talia von Oelhoffen hit a 3 to win the game for the Beavers. And in the SC game in the Pac-12 tournament, semifinal game, UCLA led that game by 4 points. Juju Watkins got fouled, 90% foul shooter, made 1, missed 1, I don't think on purpose. SC got the rebound, hit a 3, tied the game, won in double overtime. If any one of those games had gone the other way, the Bruins probably would have been a number 1 seed in Portland instead of a 2 seed in Albany, New York, playing the defending national champions. So I think they had really nothing to be disappointed about. They were banged up all year. They had absences for Olympic qualifiers. Lauren Betts missed 4 games. The Bruins were really shorthanded for a lot of the year, and it was a team primarily of sophomores. Not to take anything away from the great Charisma Osborne, left school as the 2nd leading scorer in UCLA history. But even she admitted she didn't have a very good second half of the season last year. So a very, very young team, I thought, performed brilliantly last year, although they were disappointed not to move on.
Yeah, I think it's a game of it. There's just a few bounces go a different way, and all of a sudden you're, like you said, you're in Portland instead of Albany, and that certainly makes a huge difference. I think people in the Midwest maybe don't understand the Pac-12 might have had one of its best years last year in its kind of curtain call, a season where there were just so many good teams at the top of the league. Obviously, the 2 LA schools, Oregon State had a terrific year. We saw them in Portland as well. Just talk a little bit about the depth and the talent that was there in the Pac-12 the final season.
The amazing thing about the Pac-12 last year is that the teams that you would think are bad teams looking at the records were really good teams. There was never a night off in the Pac-12. Every game was a challenge. The teams at the bottom of the standings could beat anybody on any given night. And of course, you've got Stanford, you had Colorado, you had Utah, Arizona, Washington State. I mean, an incredible array of talent. And, you know, not an easy, a lot of people have talked, I'm preempting your question, Austin. A lot of people have talked about the travel the Bruins are going to face in the Big Ten. Pac-12 was not easy travel. The games were Friday night, Sunday afternoon. You go to Washington, Washington State, there's a flight in between games. You go to Colorado, Utah, there was a flight in between games. So they're used to tough travel. But the league was exceptional last year. It was a joy calling every game.
You are. It's as if you see the questions that are sitting in front of me. You knew exactly. That's coming up later, but I think Big Ten fans maybe going to get a rude awakening here when the LA teams join. They're going to find out just how good they are. Is there a vibe kind of in Los Angeles of like, okay, yeah, we've got some really, really good basketball teams coming up this year?
Well, not only a vibe, but it showed up in the attendance, in the media coverage. Everything turned around last year. After that great Ohio State game I was talking about, the Bruins came home. I think they played Hawaii, but then they played USC, conference opener. First regular season sellout at Pauley Pavilion ever, 13,659. And all of a sudden, you know, women's basketball in the traditional media in Los Angeles has been invisible. But last year, all of a sudden, the highlights were on the local news. There were articles in the newspapers, front page articles, game reports, features on players. The buzz was incredible. And that carried over to the postseason. The attendance was great in the first and second rounds at Pauley Pavilion, the loudest I've ever heard the building in all of my years doing it. And even this summer, there have been a lot of features. Of course, when you've got both SC and UCLA very good, it feeds the rivalry. And you know, you got Juju Watkins, you have Kiki Rice, you have Lauren Betts. I mean, you have so many great, great players to feature. I think there's incredible and unprecedented enthusiasm coming into the new season.
I told you before, I'm thrilled to have these two teams in the league. I think it's going to do such good things for the Big Ten. It's going to bring some more national spotlight to it. A conference I think was already good and now has become super talented with these two new teams. Let's talk about your team in specific. A lot coming back this year. I think it starts with Lauren Betts. Kind of introduce Big Ten Nation to her and what challenges she's going to present to Big Ten teams. Might be the best post player in the conference without having played a single game in the conference yet as she enters her first season in the Big Ten.
Well, Lauren Betts, a couple of years ago, the recruiting rankings, I don't know if you put much credence in those, but there was a big debate. Who's the number one recruit, Kiki Rice or Lauren Betts? Lauren Betts was number one in the final result. Doesn't matter. The Bruins have them both. She didn't play much at Stanford her freshman year. She was behind Cameron Brink, Kiki Iriafen. But coming to UCLA, she had a chance to really expand her game last year. She's a great shooter, shot 64% from the field. Not a back to the basket post. I mean, she can play inside, but she showed some range. That buzzer beater at Oregon, the Bruins thought they had won the game on that shot. That was huge for her. Catch and shoot, elbow jumper, line drive, perfect. She's a tremendous rebounder. And the Bruins as a team are great rebounders. They out-rebounded their opposition by 14 a game last year. Really good on the offensive glass. But Lauren Betts' game really took a jump last year. Again, only her sophomore year. I think she's just going to get better and better in the future.
Yeah, she was just terrific, and I'm so excited to see her play. We've been spoiled in Bloomington with great post play here for the last 5 years with Mackenzie Holmes. So I'm excited to see Lauren Betts. Disappointed we didn't get to see the two of them go head to head, which would have been very fun. But it's obviously not just Betts. This is a team that's deep. This is a team that brings back a ton of talent. When you look at your roster that's coming in this year and some of the names that are coming back, you bring back Kiki Rice, as you said, London Jones, Jaquez, Dugalich. When you look at this roster, what stands out to you about all these players that are coming back and how dangerous this team could be?
Well, it's not just the players that are coming back. The Bruins did very well on the transfer portal, and they have an incredible freshman class coming in. They're going to be really big. They're going to be really talented. They're going to have expanded range over the last couple of years. I mean, you look at the seniors, Angela Dugalich, who's playing for Serbia in the Olympics, her second time in the Olympics, played in 2020. Charlize Ledger-Walker signed out of Washington State. She's broken the Bruins' hearts on a number of occasions. Part of the first family of New Zealand basketball. Her mom was a tall fern in 2 Olympics, and her sister preceded her at Washington State. Then the juniors, Kiki Rice. You saw the full court press documentary. You got a good insight into Kiki Rice. She's driven. She's incredibly talented. London Jones, 87 threes a year ago. Gabriela Jaquez, not known by a lot of people. She's a fantastic player. She's like a ghost. You never see her coming. All of a sudden, she's got the ball. She averaged 10.6 rebounds a game off the bench last year. Lauren Betts, we talked about. Then 2 players. It's very interesting, Austin. If you go back to 2019 and you look at the under 16 roster for the U.S. team in the America's Cup that won the gold medal in Chile, it was London Jones, Kiki Rice, Lauren Betts, Tamia Gardner, and Janiyah Barker. And Tamia Gardner joins the Bruins from Oregon State. She scored 21 against them in that win in Corvallis for them. Janiyah Barker, who is a great player, multi-talented, can play kind of like Rakia Jackson. You add to that Amanda Muse, who didn't play much last year. She was the only freshman on the team, 6'4". She's really mobile. And then the freshmen that come in, Avery Kane from Santa Maria, outstanding outside shooter. She can drive. Kendall Dudley from Sidwell Friends, Kiki Rice's old school, is a very strong player inside out. You've got Zania Soka Newman, who is also from Sidwell Friends. She's a great player. And Alina Arnisalo, who is the point guard for Finland and just led Finland in scoring in the U20 Euro competition a couple of weeks ago. So they are going to be loaded top to bottom. And head coach Corey Close, who last year had to manage minutes because there weren't a lot of available players, is going to have to manage them the other way now because there is so much talent on this team.
Yeah, now it's about how do I find enough minutes for all of these people? And isn't it crazy how in today's landscape of basketball, you recruit everybody out of high school, But then all these connections, like you're saying, these little breadcrumbs, all these players played together on the U16 team, that still matters even past the high school recruitment, because now they can enter the portal and boom, a relationship's already there. They come to UCLA and now they've just formed the U16 team 5 years later, which is pretty wild to me.
I remember many times last year just thinking to myself, wow, Kiki knows everybody.
Well, that's probably part of the reason why she was one of the players they selected to document, because she's got a great personality, seems to know everybody in the game. It worked very well. You mentioned those transfers. I mean, some really good players coming in, and I guess bad transition here, but I want to talk about Corey Close a little bit and her style of play and what we're going to see from UCLA, because one of the things I have, and I loved watching the Pac-12 when I could, but I don't have Pac-12 network. It didn't feel like they were as nationally televised as they should have been. So I'm excited to see this UCLA team, this USC team, these Oregon, Washington teams. So for Big Ten fans who maybe haven't watched a lot of Corey Close UCLA teams, what's the style of play? What should we expect to see from a close coached UCLA team?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Corey Close has been to UCLA 13 years. She is fantastic, by the way. She and the other coaches, they are so welcoming to me. They're so open with me, and they're just a joy to be with. Corey Close came to UCLA after being the associate head coach at Florida State, and she was touted as an offensive coach. But I'll tell you, the core of what she does is defense and rebounding. She wants players in position, and when they do that well, they are very, very formidable. That being said, she's never had the options that she'll have this upcoming season for scoring outside, for scoring inside. There were a couple of times last year when everybody was healthy and early in that run, November and December, when they were working the ball around and getting wide open shots every possession. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think they can play up tempo. They averaged 77 points a game a year ago. They only allowed 61. And again, the Pac-12 was a loaded offensive conference. So they can lock it down. And I think you're going to see some good lockdown defense from the Bruins. And with fresh bodies, I think Corey Close is going to adjust to the available talent. She's a really adaptable coach. I don't think she's locked into any particular style, but we'll see how she runs it.
Well, you mentioned that you've seen, 11 different Big Ten venues in your time. One of them being, you came to Assembly Hall before I was in this position, but was that 2019?
It was 2019. It was Mackenzie Holmes' freshman year.
Okay.
And great game. Bruins won 68-58. But really, that was one of the bucket list arenas for me. And it looked totally different in person than it had on TV. I just couldn't imagine what it would look like in person, and I loved it.
Yeah, that's been a common thought for people when they come in. It is much different than what you can see in the television. When we talk about the travel in the Big Ten, you mentioned it. You had traveling stuff already in the Pac-12, but is it going to be one of those things like the Pac-12 where you go to a pair of schools, you play them together, and you come home and you play a couple? Do you have any idea what the travel might look like for UCLA this year?
I have no idea. I just spend my day, trying to find schedule leaks, but I haven't found too many, except for the game in Paris, which finally got announced, and South Carolina is coming to Pauley Pavilion on November 24th. Ooh. That's the only two games I know, and those are pretty good ones. But I don't know how they're going to work the travel. I know that they have had meetings going on for the better part of a year on that issue. And, what the ultimate result is going to be, we really have no idea at this point.
Well, what I do know is when looking at your home and away splits, you are going to Rutgers and Maryland, which I think will be a rude awakening for LA folks if you got to go to Piscataway, New Jersey in the middle of January or whatever it may be. Just might be a little cold, a little snowy, but certainly when you look at the home away split, obviously you're playing USC as your home and away two-time opponent. What do you know, or does anything stand out to you? I mean, the kind of the general consensus when we talk about this in the pod is that nobody knows anything at this point in the year because anybody could turn into a really good team. But when you look at the home away splits, does anything stand out to you about what UCLA drew?
Well, we are at Indiana and Iowa, always tough. Maryland is always good. Brenda Fries really knows how to put a team together. Purdue, we played last year at Pauley Pavilion, was a good win for UCLA. That was the season opener. at Wisconsin. I've never been to Wisconsin for football or for basketball, so I'm looking forward to that. Rutgers. I watched some Rutgers last year. I thought they had some potential. I watched a lot of Big Ten last year because I do get Big Ten Network, although I didn't have the subscription service, but I do have it on my cable. I watched a lot of Big Ten basketball last year. Washington, very defensive-oriented team. Tina Langley's done a great job up there, really rebuilding that program. They have a good scorer named El Ladine, who the Bruins held in check pretty well. It'd be better if the Bruins didn't have to play USC twice. They may be the number one team in the country. And, adding Kiki Uriafen and Talia van Olhoffen to Juju Watkins, they are going to be very, very hard to guard. The home schedule, Illinois, resurgent team last year, a lot of fun. They'll play up tempo. Michigan, we have some experience in the distant past with them. Michigan State, they lost the point guard, but Minnesota, pretty good team. If Mara Braun comes back, I think they could be a handful. Nebraska, we actually played the first game in Pinnacle Bank Arena. The Bruins went to Nebraska and opened that building. So that's
how about that?
Yeah, that's the last time they got together.
Some Big Ten trivia for you right there.
How about that? And Northwestern, Corey Mueller, our sports information director, hails from Northwestern, so he's looking forward to that. Ohio State, we played last year. Penn State, I watched this. We were in the Cayman Islands to play UConn, watching SC and Penn State. I think Penn State had a 6-point lead in the final couple minutes and missed about 10 shots in a row. And that was another win for SC that helped them get the number 1 seed. You never know. It's November, but it makes a difference in March. Yep. And then USC, and it's usually our home opener, which is crazy. We played SC twice in the first 4 games last year and didn't see them again till the postseason. But I think it's going to be a very interesting schedule. I'm happy to go to Iowa. I think that'll be great. I've done a game at Iowa, but it was one of the preseason tournaments where we had to win the first game to play the second game against Iowa, and we lost the first game. So it wasn't a great trip.
What are the 3 venues that you have not been to? I know you said Wisconsin was one.
Wisconsin, Rutgers, actually 5. There's a lot of teams in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Rutgers, Illinois, Michigan State, Northwestern, and Penn State. I have not been.
So you're going to knock out 2 of them this year. You're going to the RAC, or formerly known as the RAC, Jersey Mike's Arena in Piscataway, and then you're heading to the Kohl Center as well. Just my advice on the Kohl Center is I don't know how you normally dress on a broadcast, but it gets cold in there. You're right on top of the ice rink, so I always dress warmer for Wisconsin road games because it gets quite cold in that building.
I appreciate the tip. I've heard you talk to all the other broadcasters about vantage points. In the Pac-12, we were courtside right next to the team bench every game, home and away.
Everywhere,
which wow. I love it. I'm an old hockey goalie, so it's not hard for me to look around the coach.
You're going to be in for a bit of a rude awakening in some of these spots.
Oh, I know. I went to Michigan the first time. I said, oh, my God, I should have brought my binoculars.
Michigan's up there. Ohio State, too, I would imagine, last year, right?
Yeah, we were in the corner, not too elevated, but it was a good vantage point. It's interesting, though. Our head coach, Corey Close, comes over to me literally as the final buzzer is still ringing in the arena for some post-game comments. She's always done that. She's incredible about that. Excuse me. I remember the first time we played at Williams Arena, you're in the upper deck hanging over the court. I thought, oh, man, there's no way she's going to find me up here. So the game ends, and Corey's out on the court, and Pam Walker, the director of basketball ops, the person who really runs the program, but Pam Walker's like pointing out to her where I am. I thought, oh, there's no way she's going to go up the back stairs, find the corridor, get down to our broadcast location. So I'm already going into my post-game stats, and I'm kind of doing a play-by-play of Coach Close on the floor, trying to find out how to get upstairs. Sure enough, she showed up. So if she found me there, she'll find me in any of these elevated reaches.
I think that's exactly right. That's the toughest one to get to up there at Williams Arena. You're tucked up in the corner. And Justin was on 2 episodes ago. He said they're working on trying to improve our spot. We'll see, but yeah, that's a tough spot up there in the corner. Are there any towns, cities in the Big Ten that you're excited to maybe get a night to spend and investigate a little bit into what the towns are like?
Yeah, I'm really curious about Madison. I've never been there, and I've heard it's a great town. I liked Iowa City. I've had a good time and all that. Bloomington, I loved. Spent a lot of time walking around Bloomington. I do try to get out and take in the towns when I'm there, and I think that's going to be really fun. And for you, Austin, I think you're going to Oregon and
We are, yeah.
Washington this year. Oregon, Eugene is a great little college town. Lots of places to walk. Seattle, I mean, you can't beat Seattle. And
I'm stoked for those 2 trips. I really am.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We don't know if it's going to be 2 trips or 1 trip.
Well, I guess I mean those 2 cities. Yes, my guess is it'll be 1 trip. But
we used to go to Eugene and then 45-minute bus ride to Corvallis. So that was easy. We'd go to Seattle and have to fly to Pullman. But now maybe it's going to be Eugene and Seattle in the same trip. We just don't know.
And we probably won't know for quite a bit here. As you said, we're just trying to find Easter eggs in the schedule anywhere we can. How long is it going to take? And I know for me, it's gonna take a minute. How long is it going to take for you to kind of get used to this new conference? The fact that you're going to have to say we're playing Big Ten basketball, like that kind of stuff. How long do you think it's going to take for you to really click into, okay, this is normal now?
Watching Big Ten media football, they kind of helped get me into the Big Ten mood, but I think it's going to be a different change. The hardest thing right now is I keep seeing, recruiting information from Arizona, from Colorado, Utah. I can't believe those aren't in our conference anymore. Stanford, Cal, I mean, traditional rivalries. But I think we'll build new rivalries pretty quickly, and I think it's going to be very exciting. The other thing I'm not going to get used to is playing the team that's 16th in the standings. I mean, that just doesn't compute right now.
18 teams, I believe the Big Ten tournament, I think they said it's going to have 15 teams in it, and they'll make a bracket from there. We don't even know where we're going yet into the Big Ten tournament, but that will be very different as well. That's another part of it, is down the stretch of the season, you're going to have teams playing for a berth in the Big Ten tournament, which is not something that anybody's used to.
It's like relegation games in the Premier League.
Yes, absolutely. And we do it in baseball. There's 13 teams in baseball and 8 make the Big Ten tournament, which I like in a way, because even if you're struggling and you're not in contention for the championship, you've always got something to play for because you're trying to position yourself for the tournament, which now will infiltrate into basketball a little bit. What else stands out to you when you look at UCLA? What else would help the folks at back in maybe Iowa City or Piscataway or Madison, help them get to know what exactly is in store when UCLA lines up against them?
Well, the first thing that they're going to see is this is going to be a very big team. There are a lot of players who are 6'3" and above. It's a team who will be able to shoot the 3, I think, exceedingly well. And the bigs will shoot the 3 too. I mean, Angela Dugalich had an ACL a couple of years ago. All she could do was shoot 3s on one leg, and she came back and was great last year. I think they're going to move the ball well. They're going to be youthful. They have 4 freshmen joining the roster and 2 transfers, so it may take a little while. But by the time conference play comes around, I truly believe that this is a team that can contend for a national championship. I thought they were close last year when they were number 2 in the rankings a couple of times. They were getting there. I think they're going to be better this year. I can't believe I'm saying that, Charisma Osborne. I'm sorry. But I think top to bottom, the Bruins are going to be exceptionally deep. I think they're going to come into the visiting arenas with great energy. I think they're looking forward to the challenge. And, they're a very cohesive group. So hopefully that will continue in the future.
I would imagine bringing as much back as they do, and even some of the transfers have connections with the existing players. So the cohesiveness will definitely be there. One of the things I did when I started this podcast was I went through and I have this 20-page Google Doc where I kind of created a page for each team, who's coming, who's going, transfer additions, freshmen, and then I tried to project the starting lineup for each team. And I'm going to be honest with UCLA, there are so many options for that starting 5. There's a lot of depth to this team, which I would imagine is going to be a huge advantage. But, man, you sit down and you look at all these players, you're like, man, there's about 8 or 9 of them that could start in a lot of places around the country.
Corey Close has not locked herself into a set starting lineup too early in too many seasons. She is very willing to experiment, pick and choose, see what works best. She'll use a lot of different combinations. Having Lauren in the center really makes a big difference. The Bruins have not traditionally been very strong in the post, And so they've really played a 5-out positionless kind of offense. That changes a lot when you've got 6'7" Lauren Betts in the middle. So I imagine you'll see her in the starting lineup. But other than that, it could be anybody.
Yeah, which is fun. And that's what's interesting when you prepare for this UCLA team. There's a lot of names that are going to make differences throughout the season and why they are so highly touted coming into their inaugural season in the Big Ten. Well, Dave, we appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's great to have 4 new teams in the Big Ten and great to have you guys joining us, and a lot of talent being added to the Big Ten by throwing the Bruins in the conference.
Austin, thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this. I think any conversation about women's basketball is a good conversation, and I can't wait to see you in Bloomington.
Well, we're excited to have you. I'm going to be honest, excited. We don't have to go to LA this year just because of how good both of you are that we get to host you this year. But it's great having you on. We'll definitely have you on again as the season gets closer. But a reminder, we are available on podcast form on Apple and Spotify. Also on the YouTube channel, the Back Home Network. You can catch us there every Monday at 7 o'clock and then all the time on the podcast channels. We'll see you guys next Monday. For Dave Marcus, I'm Austin Render saying so long from the Dribble Drive podcast.